Hi everyone, welcome. We'll give it another 30 seconds before we start. All right, let's get started. Hello everyone, I am Nikhil Kandankeri, Senior Director Marketing and Corporate Communications at C5I. If you ever felt ad performance can be a bit too guess and check, you're in the right place. Thanks for joining this LinkedIn Live, from costly guesswork to predictable impact, where we will unpack how AI is making ad success more predictable. And what better lens than the Super Bowl? It's not just a game, it's one of the few cultural moments where everyone shows up at the same time: the sport, the halftime show, the music, and the storytelling. That also makes it advertising's biggest stage. Brands spend millions for seconds of attention, but only a handful of ads truly land and drive real impact. So today, we'll move beyond rankings and buzz to decode what actually worked using a data led, objective lens powered by our very own CFI and Civis. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, here's a little bit about the company. CFI is a pure play AI and analytics provider that combines the power of human perspective with AI technology to deliver trustworthy intelligence. The company drives value through a comprehensive solution set, integrating multifunctional teams that have technical and business domain expertise with a robust suite of products and accelerators tailored for various industry specific use cases. At the core, CFI's focus is to deliver business impact at speed and scale by driving adoption of AI assisted decision making. Moving on to the housekeeping items. A recording will be available on LinkedIn, the event page for those who have registered. We will have the last 15 minutes dedicated to Q&A. You can post your questions in the comment section. If they do not get answered for whatever reason during the session, please send us your questions at scalewithgenai@cfi.ai. With this, let me introduce you to the speakers of the day. Our first speaker is Anis Merchant, EVP and Global Head of Innovation, IP and Analytics Consulting, CFI. Anis leads the global innovation and consulting business at CFI. He has guided sizable digital transformation initiatives for numerous global Fortune 500 clients across various industries. Anis's current role chiefly involves guiding platform innovation, setting the go to market strategy, and building the strategic partner ecosystem. Hi, Anis, welcome. Glad to have you today.
Thanks, Nikhil, for the kind introduction. Are you gunning to be a Super Bowl commentator?
I hope so after today. Uh,
Sure.
Now, on to our second speaker for the day. It's Ruchir Prasad, Senior Director, IP and Innovations at CFI. Ruchir leads the design, delivery, and GTM of Incivis and CFI Compete, two of CFI's marquee products, which have led team. He has led teams that have ensured customer delight for our Fortune 500 clients. With a robust background in technology and data science, he has been instrumental in ensuring data-driven decisions and other AI-enabled products. With this, over to you, Anis and Ruchir, to get this exciting session started.
Thanks, Nikhil.
Yeah. No, thank you, Nikhil, again, for holding both of us to our due. So, Ruchir, I'm just going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. And if you can let me know whether you're able to see it.
Yes, Anif.
Perfect. All right. Thank you. Uh, yes, as Nikhil mentioned, Super Bowl is actually more than just a sporting event. It's actually a more religious cult following which happens every year, and I was doing a little bit of research betting, and everybody knows it. It was the 60th year of the Super Bowl. I was fortunate enough to be in the same time zone when the Super Bowl was being aired, and I didn't get to see it live from a perspective in a stadium, but I did see it live on the TV in the West Coast, and the energy, the aura which the Super Bowl brought in the entire West Coast space, it was just unimaginable, and I was really happy to be there. I always believe that sports and any sporting event brings people together in a very different way, and it was heartening to see that that such an event was doing that. Uh, and along with it, not just the sporting event, but as the number states here on the opening slide, there were critical ads which were definitely there. In that 3 hour process, there were many ads. The halftime, which was a lot spoken about. My kids were actually asking me, to watch that halftime because the performer was one of their favorites, and they wanted me to watch it and see how he performed, definitely on a television. And I could just see the amount of individuals who were viewing the entire Super Bowl event. So yes, it brings in a lot of eyeballs from consumers like you and I, and there are a lot of advertisers or brands who end up spending a lot of money during that entire process as well. Now, both me and Ruchir, what we will try to do is try to give you our perspective, what we have seen using our platform through Insuvis. But before we get there and talk about a little bit more about Insuvis, this is the number we kind of came out that to air for 30 seconds, it cost any advertiser close to about $10 million. And we'll talk about the breakup of the $10 million. And just for the fun, you're saying, okay, for that 30 seconds, a brand ends up paying $10 million. And I just went down to one of the LLMs and we said, okay, what would it what would be the alternative spend if somebody had to spend these $10 million? uh, Probably you could have housing homes, annual mortgage gets spent out, not for one family but quite a bit of homes. If people are in expensive cars, you can go and end up buying expensive cars. Yes, you can go ahead and subscribe to Netflix, not for one person but for many individuals and over so many years. uh, if you were at Super Bowl, $10 million could have sponsored many tacos for spectators who were there at that show. Or for students, it could have actually done a lot good. And but brands chose to go ahead and spend on that 30-second spot. Now, I'm not saying that's bad or wrong and the money was spent in a wrong way, but the premise is, this $10 million is a lot for that 30-second spot. And naturally, brands do expect, any marketer, any organization would expect an outcome and an ROI. And that's what the entire premise is, the ROI angle, in terms of what is the ROI is the brand getting, or any of the individuals who would get from the spend. So there's so much riding for every individual who's involved in launching that campaign or creating that campaign and bringing it out there. Yes, there were clear winners. There were clear individuals who kind of, when I say individuals, the ads which really moved some of us when we watched that ad. So, and I'm not going to talk about who my favorites were, but given where things are, when you talk about the $10 million, as I said, I'll give a breakup, right? Roughly about $7 million, it would typically cost a brand to create that media or bid for that particular spot, uh, depending upon the spot which you're trying to bid for, and about $2 to $5 million to produce that ad, depending upon the the characters or the actors you're trying to bring in and the production value and all of that. It can be anywhere from 2 to 5. So on an average, we have counted it as being a $10 million investment for 30 seconds. Now, it's not just this 10 million which is being spent. There's also the other side. you know Roughly, there are so many individuals who get involved. There are so many celebrities who get involved, and if you really look at ads, as part of this entire premise, there were different types of people got involved. Some ads actually had multiples of these celebrities, it was not just one. But the one data point which is very critical is getting that attention of that consumer, and how does the consumer perceive you, and do they remember the ad, right? People may remember these celebrities, and often brands would go ahead and take those celebrities as a story and make them part of the storyline, or use their backstory to make it part of the storyline which they want to craft along with their brand. But what happens is sometimes the brand story gets lost, and the the celebrity is probably remembered, or vice versa. And it's all in the minds of the consumer in terms of how they perceive it, how they look at the ad, and how they remember the ad, and what compels them to take actions for that particular brand or for that particular celebrity, whoever it is. And that's where the data comes in to allow us to measure in terms of how would the consumer take that data. Now, typically organizations in the past would test these ads on a sample base, through a research, through a survey, and would go ahead and understand whether this ad will work or no. Now, typically that sometimes, these this testing process can also be expensive, and it can be time consuming, and more importantly, it can be, if you're going to do any final cuts at the end of the airing time, you may not have enough time to actually test your ad, depending upon where your production cycles are. So keeping that in mind, when you are going to take a decision of go no go, do you have a system which can go ahead and leverage, or can help you take actions, and make you take actions on the ads which you would like to air on, during the Super Bowl event, or whether it's any other platform, on the digital ecosystem. Now, given where things are today, AI comes to a rescue in a big way. And AI and the algorithms have advanced to such an extent that today it can really decode the ad in many different ways, and we'll talk about how it can. But not only that, but it can also measure what and how the consumers will think about your own brand or the creatives which you have. Now, given where things are, uh, you know, and typically when we work with clients, or what we have seen in the media, people who often talk about the popularity of the ad, it's largely based on what people talk about, what consumers talk about. They will, and it's largely what I would call as vanity measurements, but nobody talks about or really measures the efficacy of the creative itself. And when we talk about the efficacy of the creative, it is not just based on the social buzz or the buzz which it creates, but it also is all about a little bit of movement which you can drive in a consumer's mind. Whether it's an emotional impact, have you been able to move the needle on purchase intent, have you been able to go ahead and drive a better cognitive impact, and the cognitive impact is more around the memorability, so that you can go ahead and drive structural performance of that ad, and the outcome which you wanted to go ahead and get from the $10 million spend. Do we really measure that? Do we really get that? Because today many clients, they measure the outcome largely based on vanity measures. However, the outcomes need to get shifted or measured on the actual effectiveness of that ad in these different measures. And over the years, at C5I, through our platform in service, we've been actually identifying certain patterns. And this is the first time when we launched our platform in service in 2024. We did identify certain patterns in terms of what those, the how our brands really, what kind of strategies were they leverage adopting, and how that transformed in 2025, and how we have seen that patterns really evolve and has come to fruition. And to give you a little bit of insights and what we are seeing, that brands were really focusing early on, that you know more on the recall, on the messaging intent and brand compliance, versus purchase intent was definitely not on top of mind, and that was through the data which we could go ahead and measure. But as the years have passed by, we have seen, especially this year, there's a lot of focus on purchase intent in the ads itself. Now, the reason why, and this is again something working with our clients, and based on our own hypotheses and the kind of marketing spends which we go ahead and look at through a very variety of our customers. Marketing dollars are hard to come by, and especially in these big investments and big outcomes. And naturally, organizations, board, or the CEOs or the CMOs are today asking their teams that if they are going to spend money on these large activities or large campaigns or large activations, they better get an ROI on the ad. And the ROI would be if the customer chooses to go ahead and engage with the brand, not just from a social buzz perspective, but actually goes ahead and makes a purchase or engages or signs up to the offerings that they are ready to drive. And that's where the purchase intent comes in. So that's a pattern which we have seen shifting from 2024. We did go back 1 year. If you go back and look at one of our reports in 2024, where we had done an analysis of 2 years, 23 and 24, and that's where we were able to go ahead and give you a quick 4 year view. But our analysis really started in 2024. And that's something which we are seeing in terms of how brands are actually moving away in terms of measuring vanity measures to actually focusing a lot on how the brands can drive outcomes. But the question is, did every brand do that, or were there certain brands which didn't do that? But for before I go ahead and hand it over to my colleague Ruchir here, I just want to kind of give you a little bit perspective when we talk about measurement through data, and especially looking at a creative through a data lens. We go ahead and look at it from a lens what we call the creative effectiveness framework within Incidis, and there are critical measures which we would measure any creative coming through the funnel or coming through the pipe of Incidis. The four measures, critical measures, are emotional resonance, brand compliance, cognitive load, and recall prediction. And yes, there is a clear definitions amongst them in terms of what each of them mean. But the idea is, do these brands or do these ads or do these creatives resonate with the individuals, not just from an emotion perspective, but also there is memorability, there is the user or the consumer will be able to recall. And all of these modelings, all these models today, Incidis has about 80 plus models which it runs across these seven different broad measurement criterias, are backed up by research coming in from MIT and many of the Stanford research papers which have been published around memorability, recall, cognitive load, and many other factors. And using the research, we've gone ahead and customized and modeled our data, our own custom data around the advertising space to come up with these measures, which we've created not only these measurements, but we've also created a normative databases on an industry, on a category, on a brand level, on a industry level, which really helps our clients specifically think about creators in a very different way and have data on creators which has never seen before, and leverage that to make better decisions. Now, with that point and talking a little bit more about our analysis, I'll hand it over to Ruchir. But before I get into, Ruchi, there is, every week I've been following a lot of trends coming in from a perspective of new AI models around the machine vision. And why does Incivis or platform like Incivis becomes far more critical? We are seeing an increase in AI slop, which is really creating no or little differentiation when you see ads, because AI is more in a pattern way. And sometimes when you go ahead and ask uh, the same machine to go ahead and create a particular product or an outcome for you, it's going to have a similar pattern in a similar way. So that's why uh, creativity, your own unique creativity, becomes a very interesting element. And that's why measuring that creativity on how effective that creativity is going to be far more critical. So with that, Ruchi, over to you.
Thank you, Neef. All right, so let's start with a little Super Bowl reality check. So let's imagine there's a football field, and let's say on the left, we've got crowd applause, vibes, social chatter, and on the right, we've got structural effectiveness, recall, messaging intent, funnel strength. How much are you capturing the marketing funnel? And as you would have guessed, and you can see, they are not exactly the best of friends. What you're seeing on the screen are the top 10 ads as per ad meter. Now, ad meter, as you all know, people just go and vote. It's basically looking at how well do you remember or recall the ad, how much did you like. But the ads that did well in ad meter did not necessarily do well on Incivus. For example, uh, let me share my screen. I think we've lost any. Yeah, okay, sorry. So, for example, Budweiser. So, if you read the statement in the bottom of the screen, the crowd loved Budweiser, but structurally, we found a couple of flaws in the ad. It was one of the weaker ads that we analyzed. Now, some of these ads topped the ad meter, but we found them structurally weak. But some of the ads, according to Incivus, they were absolute conversion machines. For example, what is ranked as number two, the Lay's ad, the Last Harvest, very good ad, very good storytelling, very good emotional connect. Or if you see the ad Infinity, which is ranked, I think, sixth on ad beta, Incivus ranks that ad as number one. Very good score, relies heavily on the Jurassic Park theme, good recall, good storytelling, good messaging, and good purchase intent. We as a platform are not just focusing on, who's got the loudest cheers. We are trying to measure who's built in memory, who's driving intent, which ads align with your marketing funnel. If you want it to be merely an awareness ad, is that what you've achieved? Or you were hoping to be a conversion ad, but you've only ended up being an awareness ad in the funnel. And that's why it's a failure. Is that what has happened with your creative? So, what we're trying to show you is not exactly contradiction. We're trying to give you a bit of clarity because popularity is emotional, right? But effectiveness needs to be engineered. And when these two don't align, that is where several brands will quietly lose a lot of millions, right? Anis, can we go on to the next slide, please? Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Winning versus underperforming patterns. What is the anatomy of a winner versus, let's say, a very expensive experiment? Let's start with a winning ad. So the pattern is quite clear. They're not chaotic, first of all. They consistently get a score of 82 or above in our comprehensive metric, which is the creative effectiveness score, which comprises of several sub-metrics that Anish showed you. Each of those metrics in turn comprise of several sub-metrics. So it's a very robust mechanism that we've got in place. So the ads that are generally winners are getting a good score on CES, a very good recall, right? So a recall of 75 and above appears to be a hallmark of those ads that are performing. As I mentioned earlier, a very good messaging intent, right? So it's not just about recall, not just about putting a celebrity on the screen or a Bradley Cooper, let's say for Uber Eats, and that's it. You're hoping that it'll sell. No, the story has been nicely tied in with the advertisement and the product, right? And then the fourth one, moderate cognitive load. Now, we are not looking at, so in very simple terms, cognitive load is our ability to comprehend the ad. So we're not looking at an ad that is so complex, like it's solving a calculus problem. On the other hand, we're also not looking at ads that are so simple that an infant is going to call out colors red, white, black, right? So we're looking at ads that have moderate cognitive load level. So I would say range of between maybe 40 and 60, with 50 being the most optimum. Those are the ads that have winning patterns. And of course, ads that drive emotion with purchase alignment. On the other hand, what about the underperforming ads? So if you see the underperforming ads, you would generally notice for them entertainment is more important over messaging, right? So we're not very clear where they want to be in the funnel. Entertainment appeared to be their primary objective of creating a creative. They have humor, which is probably out of context most of the times. They don't have a strong call to action, right? So probably they are clear that this is going to be an awareness ad and not a conversion or a consideration ad. So they're not bothered about a call to action. They're not really bothered about a purchase intent. And then they might have an emotional spike. The ad could be very humorous, right? So you will laugh about it, but then forget about it the next moment, right? For example, if you've seen the Coinbase ad, there are a set of blue screens which are PowerPoint decks one after the other. Very dismal CTA strength, right? So no clear call to action, very little psychological triggers. Or if you remember the Instacart ad, where everybody's going bananas over bananas, very poor purchase intent. 30. So they've tried to make it as funny as possible, but it doesn't really drive purchase intent. That is a hallmark. So, as Anis mentioned, a disconnect in your structure is a hallmark of an ad that is quite likely to not do well, right? Anis, next slide, please. Now, this is my favorite. So, what we've done is we've analyzed 49 ads, 49 Super Bowl ads across the spectrum. And as you can very, very clearly see on the screen, on the bottom axis, on the x axis, we've got the persuasiveness score. Now, Incidus measures persuasiveness as a metric based on ad copy effectiveness, that what are the textual elements on the screen, the semantics, the voiceover. So, for example, if somebody says, uh, let's go and buy Xfinity as a plan, and somebody says, let's buy Xfinity because they're cheaper and they're more reliable, the second one would have a higher persuasiveness score. We're trying to factor in the semantics of the platform. And the y-axis is the purchase intent. Very simple terms, the entire ad package together to one targeted persona. That would X, Y, Z as a persona or as a target segment buy, subscribe, engage with the advertisements, product, or service. Now, clearly, as you can see, there is a place to be, and that appears to be the right hand top quadrant where most of the high performing ads are there. So, majority of the Super Bowl ads, without a doubt, are aiming to be high in terms of purchase intent and, of course, persuasiveness. But then again, there are some that have very high persuasiveness but fail when it comes to purchase intent. For example, the Salesforce ad. If you've seen that Mr. Beast and his, I think, Vault, I frankly couldn't figure out what they're saying, or Instacart ad. Crazy bananas about bananas, but not really driving purchase intent. That is the leaky funnel. Or you can sometimes even get lucky. Like, for instance, the Uber Eats ad, right? It does not drive persuasiveness. It has virtually zero textual elements in the ad. Only something appears towards the end. But yeah, Bradley Cooper and Matthew McConaughey, they stitch a good story together, which drives up the purchase intent. Or, for example, the Toyota ad. Now, again, the persuasiveness is not very high, but the purchase intent relies on the messaging of safety. We've seen the ad how a child talks about the safety seat belt and grows up and then offers the same safety seat belt to his father. So they're talking about safety, right? So there's a messaging which is driving up the purchase intent. So the idea here is you may get lucky if your persuasiveness is score, but still get purchase intent. But persuasiveness alone as a higher metric or a focus area does not ensure that you will get a good purchase intent, like the ads that you're seeing on the right top quadrant. Anis, I think you may like to take over.
Yeah, by the time I'm able to kind of off mute. But yeah, no, thanks, Ruchir, for doing a little bit of sneak peek into the data and the analysis which you and your team have done. But yeah, just summarizing some of the key actionable takeaways. If you're a brand, if you're a marketer, or if you're an agency who's consulting with brands in terms of what the brand strategy should be on specifically when it comes to Super Bowl or these lighthouse events which brands would sponsor or would want to act upon or would want to activate upon, uh, we must recommend these five areas. And I'm not going to read them out, they're pretty much there. But this is backed up with data coming in from Insuvis. We've been analyzing ads for the last 3 years now. Our database of ads is more than 100,000 ads, and we keep pumping newer ads every week because one of the key thing within the advertising space, you have to be fresh, you have to be current, you have to be relevant with the changing times. And that's how Insuvis remains current, because it's able to analyze the most recent trends and the most recent data. So keeping that in mind, we have seen patterns change, which you saw a little bit earlier. You see factors change. you see your competitive areas may change. So relying on historical data too much may also be detrimental. So you have to rely on things which are current and now, to go ahead and drive your measurement effectiveness on an ongoing basis. And that's why we enable our clients in many ways to go ahead and measure every creative, whether it's an image, whether it's a banner, whether it's a video, or 15 seconds, or a 5 second, or a 10 second, or a 2 minute. You can go ahead and analyze all of them to go ahead and allow you to drive the effective outcome of an ad. Now, with that, as we are almost at the end of our session, there's one more key area which I would like to go ahead and drive your attention on. Uh, you know, you actually, yes, you're trying to gain attention from a customer, but the question is, are you able to create an advantageous position for your quarterback, which is your ad or your creative, to go ahead and have that pass so that you can have a touchdown? Now, to do that, you have to ensure that for such high stake events, while you focus on attention, you also focus on that advantageous position by not only focusing on memorability, but also bringing in other factors like intent and emotions and persuasiveness to go ahead and understand how these variety of factors are driving your creative outcomes or the intended outcomes in the right structured way, backed up with data. And that's where your entire designing, your ideation, your concept of an ad process can be actually bought in with the right data, and that feedback either to your internal creative team or to an external uh, agency or a team whom you are working on creating can leverage that data to go ahead and take these insights to go ahead and create a next better creative, and probably get a better outcome, not in this one, not in this Super Bowl, but if you're planning for your next Super Bowl, you have data to go ahead and back up and drive those insights. And that was our intention, to go ahead and summarize our learnings. We will be coming up with a detailed blog and an article and a white paper. Look out for that. It will be published on our LinkedIn, which will allow you to go ahead and download from our website. So do look forward to that. And with that, I would like to say thank you from C5I. And I know, Nikhil, there are a few questions which have come in the chat. So would love to you to come in, or I can go ahead and start picking up some of these questions, and between me and Ruchir we can start driving that.
Thank you, Anis. That was a really engaging session. So, like you said, let me get straight to the questions.
Yeah.
We have a question about from a user who says that this was a really engaging conversation. This year's Super Bowl peaked at 137 million viewers, and the brand paid as much as 10 million for just 30 seconds of airtime. With that kind of scale and financial commitment, relying on post-game buzz or rankings feels insufficient. From a CMO's perspective, how can predictive AI platforms like Incivis be useful before launch to objectively assess which creative elements are most likely to drive meaningful impact and brand lift, along with conversion impact?
Sure. No, great question. Would have loved to know your name as well, because it's a very intriguing question. Uh, See, you know, I would also say that today Incivis measures just on its own is not good enough for any of our brands. And this is something which we haven't spoken of because we don't have the data for every brand which is out there. For some of the brands, we do because we work with them. Uh, we are able to actually measure the in-service KPIs or the in-service measurements with the actual KPIs like brand list, search engagement, or conversion impact, or your ad outcomes pretty effectively. And we have science to go ahead and back up why these KPIs matter. Because these KPIs are not just being measured or tested on a standalone basis, but we are able to actually link it to the outcome of the intended ad or the spend which you have. So if you are focusing on mid to bottom funnel strategy, would these ads or these strategies really enable, and how do these KPIs align to that? So That is something which we are driving, and that's our feedback to most of the CMOs we work with around this. That when you look at your advertising, just don't look at the vanity measures, but you are able to actually link some of the KPIs and all of the KPIs of Innovis to the ad outcomes specifically.
Thanks, Anis, and I'll urge the attendees to please feel free to post questions in the chat. In the meantime, we'll pick up the next one. Here we have Saswati ask a very interesting question. So what she has is that while ads are extremely expensive, which is already identified, and awareness is no longer enough. Her question is more about how agencies should structure their measurement strategy so that they can clearly know if the ad will drive sales, growth, or competitive advantage.
Yeah, I just somewhat answered this question previously in the previous question, but see, there is, you can do two parts, right, Saswati? You can do a pre-flight, let's say a measurement of Insuvis, saying that you can actually test what this creative would stand on its own, and you can really come up with a particular KPI. So you know what your pre-flight, and for most of these brands, we all know that they might have created a 2 minute slot, and then they have actually gone ahead and cut it down to a 30 seconds or a 15-second slot to be, because if you go on YouTube right now, most of these ads will be there, and they're much more longer than 30 seconds, by the way. They're not just 30 seconds. So these brands have gone ahead and cut that 30 seconds for the 30-second spot. And for your benefit, Incivis allows you to tell you which frames have the peak moments and the pit moments also. So you can actually go ahead and cut those screens and go, and when you're trying to launch the campaign, you go in with a very more refined version of that ad for that 30-second spot with the right data. And once you the data is aired, and once you get the data outcomes of what the ad data or the ad campaign gave you back, whether it's conversions, brand lift, outcomes, whatever the outcomes you may have, Inservice allows you to measure or correlate each of the KPIs to the outcome. And with that kind of a bank, you have a better analysis to going ahead and launching the creative. So, as an agency, tomorrow when a brand or a or a CXO would ask you, "Hey, I don't like this color, or I don't like this person, or I don't like the way the ad is structured or the story is structured," today it's not a gut or a feeling or the individual's perspective. You can actually leverage data to go ahead and prove why that ad has worked or not worked at a pixel level.
Thanks, Anis. And a very interesting question from Atif. So, this is something I'm sure is in the minds of everyone, where while we talk about great ads, sometimes ads can be controversial, and that's the honest fact. So, are there any ways that Incivis can flag a potential controversy?
Yeah, we just did that some while ago. Anis, you want to take that? Sydney
No, no,
Sweeney?
go ahead, please.
Yeah, so we've got the Sydney Sweeney ad was flagged by Inservice. We said that it will generate buzz in a way that might be controversial. So we've got purchase intent, where, as Anis mentioned, with the evolution of AI, we try and build personas with their sensitivities involved, right? So you can have an ad that you probably will feel do well in the Western world, and when you try to sell it in the Middle East, it'll not, because people are not used to consuming those items, right? So all of that science is built in the persona, which is used to leverage or to find out what is the purchase intent of a product. And one of the factors in that is the negative element or the controversial element, or elements that I would say don't gel everywhere, to be flagged in any advertisement. And it does that very, very efficiently.
Yeah, Ruchir.
Anis, anything you'd like to add? If not, we can jump to the next question.
I think we can jump on to the next question.
Okay, perfect. So we have one from Zainab where she talks about how platforms today have evolved. There are a lot of platforms that are tracking Super Bowl conversations real time. The buzz does not necessarily translate into business, which we saw on in the deck today. So when we are evaluating these campaigns, her question is more about which behavioral metrics do we prioritize, and that will give us confidence over raw buzz and why.
Yeah. So there are two KPIs, meaning there are two perspectives, right? Today, what we were talking about, Zainab, was mostly around the creative aspect. We didn't talk about the overall campaign data points because campaign has far more data points. We were just focused on the creatives. So if you really want to go ahead and prioritize KPIs, see, at the end of the day, marketing dollars are becoming very precious in the market today. And if you really, even with our marketing team, right, Nikhil and team, this is a conversation we literally have every day. What's going to be the spend outcome, right? If you are going to drive these spends, what is going to be the outcome? So we definitely drink our own cola, with whatever work we do within our space. So the real KPIs which any CX or any person who is a P&L leader would ask, from a behavioral KPIs, is, let's say if you are an e-com company, or it's not visits, it's actually conversions, which that ad or that campaign has actually got you. That's just an example of a behavioral measure you would want to go ahead and track. Or if there are signups which you wanted or intended to have, whether it's a sign up to your newsletter, sign up to a pre campaign, which, let's say you're launching a product and you wanted people to sign up for an early release update, you can go ahead and, those will be the right behavioral measures which I would say you should track. These are just examples, but there can be many more depending upon the scenario and the outcome you're trying to drive.
I can just add on to this. So what Anis said is we measure a lot of KPIs. Just to give you an idea, we have roughly around 52 KPIs that at any point of time get generated in a various set of combinations and permutations. And as Anis mentioned, it also depends on what domain you are looking at. So we've got a concept of benchmarking in Incivis where we have a large repository of ads, and we've benchmarked them as per category, as per industry, as per geographies, as per domain. So there could be a scenario, and there are scenarios. For example, and this is quite intuitive. Let's say we've got a lot of pharma clients, right? So let's say we've got an advertisement from the pharma client. Generally, you would notice pharma companies, the KPIs, persuasiveness would be a much higher KPI than, let's say, recall, right? Because for someone to use a pharma product, he needs to be really convinced. But then the same set of guidelines will not always work for, let's say, somebody buying chips or somebody buying Coke, right? So it also depends. We've got a huge, Anis, if you want to add regarding the importance of benchmarks, we've got these benchmarks across geographies, industries, categories that will tell you, okay, in this sector, for this industry, for this geography, for this language, for this target profile, this is the set of metrics that makes an ad perform.
Thanks, Ruchir. I think Ujala has a question around whether Incivis is only suitable for ads ready to launch, or we can also test under production ads.
Yeah,
Oh,
Ujala, so if you think about the ad creative life cycle, we have a very different proposition to test ideas and concepts. Get to the storyboards, it cannot test storyboards, because that's where the current state is. But once you have the first version of an ad, which you have created, which is not a storyboard but a finished product, then only you'll be able to test it. So it is, yes, under production can mean many things, but if it's a completed ad or a completed visual, it can be an image as well, we can test it clearly.
Thanks, Anis. I think that's all we had from a questions point of view. We could maybe wrap up, but once again, thank you, Anis and Ruchir, for a really engaging session. Who knew 30 seconds of a Super Bowl spot could cost 266 years or equivalents of 266 years of Netflix or maybe 1.6 million nacho platters, especially for a foodie like me. And while these are funny facts, they also a reminder of the stakes that are really high. So, and that's the specific point, right? Popular does not mean effective, and the buzz and the rankings don't always match with what the data shows. So, once again, what we've tried to do today is bring an evidence-based lens to creative effectiveness so that teams can move from instinct-led decisions to AI-powered insights and create impact at scale. So thanks once again, everyone, for joining us. If you have any more questions, and we've really got some interesting questions and interest, so if you'd like to explore how C5 I Incivis can help evaluate and elevate creative impact, please feel free to reach out to us at scalewithGenAI at c5.ai. We'd be happy to connect. Thanks once again for joining, and please do follow us for some more interesting sessions like this one.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.